Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fractional Excitations, the podcast from Tafti Lab at Boston College. My name is Enrique Gonzalez. This is Sidhad Nandanwar, and we are graduate students in Tafti Lab. And today we are joined by Cassidy Wichman, a senior undergrad that is graduating in the following months. And, and yeah, welcome.
Hi.
Hi, how are both of you doing?
You're doing good. How are you?
Good, good. So today we have Sid and Cassidy. They've actually been working together for the past
2 years.
2.5 years,
Mhm.
yeah.
2.5 years in our lab. So Sid, maybe you can explain a little bit how the dynamic with a graduate student and undergrad works in our lab.
So basically, each undergrad is kind of supervised by this graduate student advisor, and the graduate student advisor kind of works as an intermediary between the PI and the undergrad. So the undergrad is supposed to kind of help and assist the graduate student during their, I guess, shortcomings.
So you've two been working together for this time. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that experience. So Cassidy, what has been the process of working with Sid? How did it start? How did you get into the lab? Maybe tell us a story about all of this.
Oh yeah. So on the first day I showed up for my first day, I was really nervous, and I knew I was going to be assigned a graduate student, but nobody had told me like anything about it yet. And I showed up, and Mira had introduced me to you, but I didn't know I'd be working with you yet or anything. And then Tafti comes over and goes, "Oh my God, meet Sid, your new graduate student." I was like, "Oh," but nobody told you ahead of time, so we were both like
I
surprised.
mean, to be fair, I didn't know either. I thought Shinny would be getting Cassidy since it kind
Oh,
of
wow.
aligned with her major as well and like what she did because Shinny is like the most, I guess, towards the chemical side of the lab up until that point, and so it was kind of assumed that you would be going to Shinny.
I
Mm-hmm.
see. So it was a surprise.
A surprise to both of us.
Both of you, and then you started working together.
Mhm.
And what were like the first few things you had to learn while being in the lab? You coming from a chemistry side, I guess you had some background in the chemistry, but what were the differences or new things you saw, or what did you learn?
Yeah, I feel like the project itself wasn't that difficult to grasp because I had just taken inorganic chemistry, so all of the like the transition malodecahalogenide and that stuff was very familiar to me, but I didn't really know any of the physics, so had to be explained like superconductivity and other stuff like that that's relatively basic now. Um but yeah, then we started working, and I think like sealing tubes was like one of the first things we learned, which I had like a little experience with like using like melting glassware in
Oh,
organic lab.
really?
Yeah, like a little bit. Like you like put it in like a Bunsen burner and like change
Oh,
it
I
to
didn't
do
know the
like that
Bunsen.
inert atmosphere setup that I showed you that one time.
Oh, wait,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know the Bunsen burner gets that hot though to melt
It's like
glass.
glass. It's not like quartz, so
Oh, I
it's like
see. I see.
so it's not as like but
Hmm.
but that was definitely an adjustment, and I feel like the like most of the chemistry stuff kind of rolls over, like the like weighing and the powders
Hmm.
and stuff. All that is
All the
pretty much the yeah
stoichiometry that
the
you have to weigh
grinding at
out.
the stoichiometry, that kind of
Yeah.
all rolls over. I'd been done that before.
Yes.
Mm.
Basically, yeah. Sid is one of the best people in our lab at sealing tubes. Maybe you can, but for our audience, can you just say why we seal tubes in general, or I just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So basically, we want to seal tubes. Like we want to put powder in like quartz glasses and like seal them under vacuum, so that the inside is kind of in vacuum and doesn't. When we heat it to high temperatures to make them all like reacted with each other, they don't react with the air or like the atmosphere that's in the tube with it. So we kind of make this neck, a very tiny neck, to like vacuum out all the atmosphere in there, and then we very quickly seal kind of this
The
really thin
flame.
part with the flame. So
I
it's under
see.
vacuum.
So we use this torch inside of this fume hood,
Mm-hmm.
and
Call it
yeah,
the sealing station.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I think that's the only thing we haven't named in the lab, the sealing
Yeah.
station.
So usually in the lab we have various equipment, and we give each equipment names. Like the furnaces have different names, and all the equipment. So yeah, the sealing station. It's right. We haven't named yet. So maybe
Maybe someone should get
we
on
can
Yeah.
it.
think about a name. Yeah. So Also, so you mentioned about your project, so you could grasp pretty quickly because you have the background in organic chemistry. So maybe give us just a glimpse into what your project's all about. So maybe just a general review about it.
Yeah, so the major project we worked on was synthesizing major polymorphs of tantalum disulfides and then intercalating it with different organic molecules to induce superconductivity. And do you want to talk more about
Yeah, so these tantalum disulfide that we are working on, the different polytypes are basically different stacking orders, amongst other things, of tantalum disulfide, and each one of them have different properties depending on how they stack. And since these tantalum disulfides are van der Waal materials, you can access the
that?
gap between the layers with some organic compounds or inorganic compounds. But basically, if you space out the layers with organic compounds, they could, well, they could space it out, or they could also introduce like some charge transfer between the layers with the organic compound mediating that charge transfer. And so that can introduce like new properties.
So maybe we can come into some of the shortcomings or difficulties that you've gone through during this project. So how has that all been?
Yeah, I think it was definitely stressful at first,
Mm-hmm.
and especially like we didn't really know the phase diagram or anything for where these materials would form, so we had to do that basically from scratch. And then also getting the powders to be pure was definitely a challenge as well. We kept having like different parasitic phases form at different temperatures, so we had to like set very specific ramp rates and temperature rates in order to isolate the specific metastable polymorph that we were targeting. And then that's just for the solid state synthesis. And then we still had to do the chemical vapor transport, which a lot of the time that just doesn't work.
Yeah, there's also like a lot of contrasting literature on
Yeah.
this subject. And so we were kind of misled by this kind of contrasting literature for like a solid 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
So
I see. So in terms of timeline, how has this looked, and what is your day to day actually in the lab? Can you walk us through the different types of instruments that you use, or how does a day in Cassidy's life at Tafti Lab look like?
Yeah, so I'd say my day to day, I first decide what material I'm going to grow that day or what synthesis attempt I'm going to do, and then make sure to document everything in my lab notebook and do the stoichiometry, and then I'll prepare my boat to like go in the glove box with all the necessary supplies, and then grind the appropriate powders, and then take everything out, and then seal it, and then put it in a furnace, and then set the ramp rates and temperatures and all of the parameters.
So recently, you've started to work with more dangerous chemicals in our lab. So yeah, maybe you can go into that.
yeah, so bromine is, I guess you can explain what bromine is better than I can, being from
Yeah, it's a
chemistry.
halogen, and it's in a liquid form, which makes it challenging to work with as well. Like at least iodine is like solid, so you can just like put it in the tube. But the liquid chemical is definitely more difficult to work with, and it's also very volatile, and it's also very toxic, so you don't want to breathe it in. So we have to make sure to work with it always under the fume hood, and like keep it cold as well, so it doesn't evaporate. And also like it requires a very specific amount, so we have to pipette, which is not.
Just eyeballing it at
Yeah,
some
we're
point.
yeah.
You're basically eyeballing the weight and praying that it's kind of near the stoichiometry.
Yeah, so we never really get it because it's like 0.08 milliliters of bromine and for the stoichiometry that we're targeting. So it's difficult to get that much, especially for somebody who doesn't pipette very often.
That's me.
It's
Yeah, and also like you're also going to like have some bromine evaporate.
Yeah, it's hard to get the correct stoichiometry.
right. And actually, evaporated bromine is pretty dangerous, right? If you inhale much, you can suffocate.
Yeah.
You
So-
get like chemical burns as well. So we have to make sure we use like this liquid nitrogen cold trap
Okay.
and so much the bromine in there, so it kind of stays as a solid form.
Yeah, and you have to be careful what solvents you use with it as well, because it can create like bromo organics.
Yeah.
So additional safety precautions when working with these materials in the lab. So you've learned a lot, and you've done a lot during all these years. So in general, can you talk about your experience in Tafti Lab and also juggling this with your coursework? in your whole experience?
Yeah, I would say my overall experience at Tafti Lab has been very positive so far. I've definitely learned a lot, and especially in physics, like wasn't a field I knew very much about beforehand. I mean, there's definitely like a lot of connections to chemistry, but especially a lot of the pure physics I didn't really know that much about. And I feel like it can be difficult to juggle it with coursework, especially because like I have a double major in a very different subject, so it can be hard to like feel like, oh, I have to do like my lab work, and I feel like a lot of professors, like especially like my other majors in history, like don't really understand. I'll try to be like, oh, I have to go to my research lab, and they're like, no, you have this assignment. I'm like, yeah, but so I feel like it can be kind of difficult, but I've tried to manage deadlines and prioritize things like day by day.
Yes. So for the audience, you did your bachelor's in chemistry.
I'm getting a bachelor's in chemistry and history, double major.
Great.
So, how do you feel about the lab responsibilities that were assigned to you, and how did that help you with your
Oh
future?
yeah, at first I feel like I was really intimidated because I wasn't exactly sure like how everybody would want, like I managed the chemical inventory and also the hazardous waste. Like especially for the chemical inventory, I wasn't sure like how everybody wanted it organized or if there was already like a set way of doing it. But then when I looked at the existing sheet, I felt like there was room for improvement, so I redesigned it myself. And I think that's helped a lot with the efficiency of the lab and people knowing which chemicals we have available and which ones we need to purchase. And then for the hazardous waste, I feel like that was relatively straightforward. It was just like getting in contact with the company that picks up the waste and making sure to put it out at the correct dates.
Yeah. Cassidy has done a great job in the lab making this chemical data sheet and developing this system for our lab, and we are all very grateful for that. So there are very good contributions to the Tafti Lab.
Thanks.
Yeah. So now you're approaching graduation,
Mm-hmm.
and you're finishing your coursework and finishing up the work you're doing with Sid in the lab. Um, what are your plans for the future? How do you feel about leaving Boston College, and what do you take with you?
Yeah, I'm definitely very sad to be leaving BC, finishing my undergrad, but I'm also kind of excited to like get a job and like have an apartment and all that. So I think that'll be fun. But I'm planning on taking at least 1 or 2 gap years and then getting a job. I recently did 2 interviews and I have a final interview on Tuesday. So I'm looking forward to
Okay.
that. One of them is in material science and the other is more like physics, sort of. So
Yes.
some good opportunities and then possibly pursuing graduate studies in the future.
Great. Okay.
So, so you know how we like to name all of our furnaces and like
Mm-hmm.
different equipments in lab. Um, out of all the names, which one is your favorite?
Oh, this is a good one. I like jalapeno. I feel
Huh.
like that one's funny.
I've never seen you use it though.
I don't think I've ever used it. Well, it was in Graph Lab for a really long time, right?
Oh, I
I don't
see.
know where it even is now.
Do we know where it is?
Halloween in our second lab back in Chile.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
it's there. Oh,
I see.
I don't think I've ever used it, but I think it's funny because it's like hot, but it's not like directly related to fire or like
I
heat. Like
see.
all the other ones, I feel like are very literate. Like
Mhm.
that one is, I feel like a little more creative.
I see. Yeah.
So, with all these responsibilities and everything you've learned in the lab, how has these things helped you with things maybe outside of the lab?
hmm Yeah, I think it's helped me a lot in job interviews and search so far. Like, in the interview I had on Thursday, the interviewer was like very specifically was like, "Oh, I really like this like chemical inventory redesign. Can you tell me more about that?" So I think it gives me like a good thing to talk about, and it's also like shows a lot of like responsibility as well, and like control over the process, and not just like following the steps, but like actually like trying to improve it yourself.
That's great.
Shows initiative.
Yeah. Well, Cassidy, thank you for agreeing to be a part of this podcast, but also for every contribution that you've done to Tafti Lab and being a part of the group. Thank you, Sid, for being here. Cassidy, we wish you the best and everything that comes for you in the future and all your endeavors after your bachelor's. And thank you everyone for listening to the Tafti Lab podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.